yeah, I wanted to talk about the energy, not specifically like astrologically and alignment and the moon and everything, because quite frankly, I haven't even looked into it. I just meant things that I've wanted to share. um, and I was thinking about how in the last episode I just shared that I had spilled boiling water on my head, and then I was like, that hurt, and just moved on. Or how I was just like sitting on snow, and I'm like, yeah, I am cold, and just moved on. Um, and I've noticed that I get this sort of shock response from people when I share not only like the bigger things that I have overcome in life, but also when I share like everyday inconveniences, because I am a rather optimistic and hopeful person and very positive presenting. I bring in all of the love that I hold and my best intention and my greatest hope for people and of people when I enter a room. And I feel like that um, when you're in a more negative headspace can be misconstrued as no challenge, when in all actuality I think it's very similar to just my sun sign in general and how it's perceived, Pisces, which I have quite a bit of Pisces in my chart, as well as quite a bit of Sagittarius, quite a bit of like fieriness and spontaneity. But Pisces in particular is actually the oldest, wisest sign in the zodiac, but it's often seen as rather naive or juvenile. And why that is because Pisces has essentially gone through the entire cycle of the zodiac and all of the lessons and the experiences on the spiritual journey. And that returning to self and returning to the inner child and the simplicities in life and realizing just how not serious it is what Pisces is actually doing. It's aware of all of the grievances and the burdens and the big things and the things that you're afraid of, and still shows up authentically and still shows up with positivity and still shows up with the best intention. So anyway, it was having me thinking about, I believe it was at some point last year where I was flying to one of the weddings that I went to. And I was telling this woman that I was on the plane with, and she was quite the character. I helped open one of her, what are they called? Like nips? Like the little alcohol bottles. um, but anyway, I was telling her about how I had several flights and layovers and an unexpected need to stay at a hotel, and then I didn't have like money to tip the shuttle driver, and then I ended up like on the street at midnight alone, and I didn't know like where I was or like how I was gonna get food, or I didn't have my luggage, and I actually wasn't the one even like buying the flight, so I had to like call people, and like it was a whole thing. um, so I was smiling, I was laughing as I was sharing this with her, and she was like, how are you still laughing? How are you still happy? And I feel like this is something that I get confronted with a lot. There's times where I've had to deal with like loved ones' crises, and I have my other loved ones also dealing with it, like fully feeling it and breaking down, and me just going through the motions of having to handle it, because it is not my first rodeo having to take the reins in crisis, which is, I would argue that they're being a little bit healthier actually feeling it. But yeah, after so many years of healing and psychology, I do actually process the things, but I'm also very good at taking things head on. And all of this to say, it is a mindset, it is a perspective that did come on the other side of necessity, but it's a very powerful tool, so I wanted to share it, which is essentially, first of all, what has happened has happened. all we can do now is what's next. So I mean, I can go into the whole spiritual labyrinth of like, in scientific labyrinth, honestly. I mean, I wrote a preliminary theory work on the superconscious state, which I am continuing to revise, but you know, our idea of time as linear is false, and that space-time is as complex and more dimensional than we think. And also that our energy is funneled into the reality that matches it. So honestly, with all of the politics that is happening right now, I find like walking on eggshells giving this example, but I think it helps illustrate it really well, where there are people who want a thing and people who are afraid of a thing. And people use that psychology, that fear, whether it's, you know, a right, a freedom, a whatever, people are taking advantage of that. But you have all of this, I'm really excited for it, all of this, I'm really fearful of it. That is emotion. That is your currency. And you're both feeding into the same reality, whether you fear it or you love it. So, the responsibility of us is to be conscious of our consciousness and put that energy towards the desired outcome. Another thing that I have learned through emotionally tumultuous experiences is that one thing that a lot of people take advantage of or manipulate, even if completely unintentionally or subconsciously, is the brain's desire for closure. And I mean, I am human. There are times where I will chase what is not the healthiest for me because that was what I was taught those things looked like, but they were from unhealthy individuals. And there are times where I will, you know, make excuses and my own assumptions based on my own like divine intuition of how people, because I can see people past what they're projecting based on their fears. And so again, that's still living for the hope of people, and that's still living for the potential of people, and that feeds into them not having closure, that they're not fulfilling that. However, I've had so little closure that I am entirely content in not having it and not providing it to maintain my own peace. And that journey required so much time and work in healing worthiness wounds and coming to understand who I am, the value that I hold, what I bring to the table, and what I deserve to be reciprocated. So, getting back to this mindset of having hope and optimism and love for things that seems naive, and possibly even more so for the things that are guarded or have a difficulty trusting. Because I joked with someone last year about this, and they were like, holy shit, Morgan, I think you're right. Like, that's crazy. I gotta tell my friends and apply this to things and blah, blah, blah. But it was like, it was a theory that I came up with because I was thinking about the people that I love in my life and our similarities and differences and our tastes and their relationships and connections. And I was thinking about like the opposites attract, but then also what is complementary. And I came up with this theory that I think people are attracted to people who outwardly project who they feel they are on the inside, or like the parts of them they feel unseen. And if you saw my Yuletide video, the longer one that had the Hear Me Out cake, I was talking to Heaven, and we were talking about having a more protective, morally gray, like a more troubled or colder, less trusting, less open individual, because how we've processed trauma outwardly is so open and so soft. That was our coping mechanism, but there is still that part internally that is angry and that is scared and that has difficulty trusting and all of those different things. And I was saying that like everything down to like physicality, to expression and presentation, to emotional expression and development and intelligence and utilization of communication, to intellect, to all of these different things. I find that the people who seem most opposite in their presentation and their expression in the world have such a commonality and such an understanding internally. So getting back to that mindset that I feel like can be really misunderstood, when something happens that I don't particularly like, I realize that my energy, whether consciously or unconsciously, was directed for that to be the most probable outcome. And the thing about understanding that truth about our reality and the power of our own minds is to not shame yourself and not blame yourself, because between our society and our upbringing and our traumas, we have so many ingrained limiting beliefs and unintentional things and fears and emotional wounds, and we're going to have doubt and lack of trust and fear and all sorts of things, anxieties, insecurities. But that is really the healing journey, is that taking accountability because you deserve it. And sometimes that is not even the initial motivation. For me, I went through the entire journey because I wanted to have the skills to nurture the kind of connections that I had always craved. I had never done it for me, but along the way, I started to learn to trust myself, and I started to realize my worth, and I started to realize that I actually did deserve the things that I desired, and started to take them down from the pedestal, and also acknowledged that I was taught that projection upon a person was love, and what each projection that I had along the journey of healing taught me about myself, and what I was really trying to tell myself or show myself to value within myself. So, that being said, when you spill something, when you hurt yourself or someone else, when a crisis breaks out, when something happens, it has happened. It has gotten to that point. A manifestation of physicality to show you just how much energy was projected in that direction. And you can't change that has happened. One incredible thing my therapist told me in the beginning of a phase of healing was, it is not your fault what has happened to you. However, it is your responsibility to do something about it and not perpetuate those cycles or those behaviors or those mindsets that bring harm to yourself and others. So, when anything happens to my phone is breaking, I spilt boiling water on myself, I was a couple minutes late to class, I have anxiety that I might have talked too much, this, that, the other, I acknowledge it for what it was, and I reflect on that part of myself. Is this coming up because of shame? Is this coming up because of doubt? Why do I have an uncomfortable feeling to this? Okay, why am I attaching that to my worth? Is there something I can actually do about it? What do I want to put energy towards next? And I think that's also something that's been a huge limiter for me, but also a world of benefit for me, is I am extraordinarily future oriented, and that comes from never feeling satisfied or safe where I was. And so to this day, it's kind of hard for me to be present, which is, part of a more personally fulfilling reason to have the Divine Diaries, is because it calls my attention back to the beauty that's happening right in front of me. But it also fulfills this kind of like dopamine fueled drive to plan for a future that is safe and sustainable and supportive and fun and spontaneous and adventurous, and the things that really feel fulfilling and nurturing to the kind of person I am. And that self-awareness has also been really profound for me. But I almost never think about the past. I do think about, like, I have thought about it slightly more as I've healed, but a lot more of like looking at my mind or my habits or my negative emotions and becoming introspective, possibly too much, about how and why they're there, and what purpose did they serve, and are they still doing that, and what could I modify, even if a little bit, to make those feel better. So I more so think about the feelings and the circumstances that feel uncomfortable, as I don't have an extraordinary amount of memories. But speaking of which, my scars are burning. Oh yeah, that's a fun thing about keloid scars I don't think a lot of people know. They burn like a lot, like they hurt, especially when they grow, and they never stop growing. I've had to get radiation on them, and this is a side tangent, but I think it's a really funny joke. I had told somebody about that once because one of my chests was burning, and I was like, yeah, it's like in Harry Potter when he's like, my scar, it burns. And they were like, oh my god, the chosen one, chosen tits, Harry Potter tits, Daniel Rad tits. And then my nickname became Rad Tits. So there's some fun Morgan lore for you. I feel like this is going a little bit all over the place, but my point in this is to say, I feel so happy with who I've become and the life that I've built for myself, and I feel more present and more gratitude than I ever have before. But I do still crave that security, and I am anxious, though I was taught not to trust myself, despite being the one that was the only one and consistently saved myself when no one else could or would. And even when I didn't know how I would maintain or obtain the means to do or have or be some of the things that I've made work for myself, somehow manage to make it work. And so, yeah, I've learned that it is me who had done it all, and but still unlearning the doubt that you were taught, and learning to trust yourself, and also not having the solidity like of a plan or a nurturing environment to like fall into, knowing that I am to completely fend for myself in an economy, in a social political world that the odds are not in our favor, to stay, again, that blindly optimistic is scary. But nothing that I've done was ever possible or obtainable or reasonable. And I've done it. And I think I'm also extraordinarily stubborn, where like I'm in these 2 business classes, and there's business and nonprofit basics and career ecology, and both kind of brought up the question of passion. And I think I'm leaning more towards career ecology in my philosophy of building or designing a life and building a business and a career, because it's much more about what elements create a well-rounded, satisfying life. Like if you're going to feed your work, your life source energy, your time into something, what is actually worth that? And I've said to my friends, like, every job, every relationship, no matter who it is, whether it's emotionally, physically intimate, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether it's a teacher, a boss, whether it's with a habit or a hobby or anything, the difference between a dream job, partner, house, whatever, and one that feels soul-sucking is one that's worth the work, one that resonates, one that brings enough fulfillment. And that's going to be different for everyone. Is it that you really like completing tasks? Is it that you really like being seen and validated? Is it that you really love connecting with people and you love knowing that you made a difference in someone's life? That's why people have different tastes in relationships of what they're interested in and what they're attracted to. And again, to not chastise yourself for your desires and your tastes and your likes, but to know thyself and to articulate thyself, and not settle. And I think that that's one thing, I had talked in the last season about how, in systems thinking, a lot of young people here, like, really wanting to change the world, and I'm like, I love it, me too, are neglecting the individual, and that's when a system crumbles. I think in this mindset, a strength that I have really had, again, out of necessity on the other side of my experience, is an unwilling to continue to self-sacrifice or continue to surrender. And I think this came from being like so present in fleeting moments where I was so dissociative in general, and realizing that I was not present, and realizing that I was wishing away such valuable, and your entire life is valuable, but specific ages where your brain is developing and your life is building and your experiences and all of the little niche things that make you who you are and develop personality and an identity, and to be so distant and withdrawn from reality and wishing so much of not only your valuable lifetime but just such precious time away. I have become so unwilling to settle, and I think that is a huge argument that I think a lot of older generations have in perspective to youth, because it's misconstrued as an inability or an unwillingness to work. And I think that that, you know, as like a generational issue, gets a lot more towards the like economical roots that, like, you know, again, in the business and nonprofits, we were talking about like adding value to shareholders and yada yada yada. And a lot of people's business decisions and life decisions are based on self-interest, and like voting, working, you have to, what is the word, incentivize, that's the word. If there's no incentive, as in if people can't afford to have a home or a family or retire or go on vacations or go on adventures or do whatever they want to do, or they don't feel like their personal beliefs or rights or issues are actually being addressed in a democratic situation, then they're not incentivized to take the action that you desire them to. This is so much information, very chaotic, very ADHD tangent. But I think my optimism and my discipline and the things that kind of confuse people about me all come from this place that I am unwilling to settle. I never realized until I really got to know myself in therapy that I am quite stubborn. That I have an idea of what is possible because it lives in me. Like, you know, you hear people talk about, like, I know, like, beautiful, passionate, unconditional, irrevocable love exists because I have it and I feel it on a daily basis, and I just want to pour into somebody, and I see it in my friends, and I see it reflected in my reality already through the people who really see me as I am and not the projection of what they needed to see to self-fulfill their limiting beliefs and project onto me, the people who could put themselves aside to see me as I am because they were willing to face themselves. And I think that that's a thing about people who are like energetically clean in that way. I think I even posted like a short video from an interview of Dub Cameron talking about an ex saying something similar, that he was like, I'm like, you're so energetically clean that what bounces off of you is me, and I don't like myself enough to be confronted with you, which is why we can't be friends at this juncture. And I think that that's just, it's so incredibly true. And for me, I am so happy and grateful for all of the little things that I've created for myself and this peace, and I'm living somewhere that always brought me joy, even if it's not my forever home. I'm so grateful for this time, and I'm so grateful for this education. When I was little, I used to dream about higher education, and well, granted, I used to be praised on very little besides my intelligence, but yeah, and to think that this was something that I could build for myself after not thinking I even had the resources or the communication skills or the perspective, because again, that information was gatekept from me, to even be a member of society, to not only now be one, but be a fulfilling, interactive and dedicated community member. I'm so grateful, and I so deeply recognize the progress that I've made. But I think that that is also something so incredibly human and so incredibly exciting and profound about the human experience, is that we crave more. And I don't want this to be like discouraging, because I think that, like, for me, I've mentioned so many times, I am a hopeless romantic. It has been honestly the most pedestaled thing through my trauma, to the point where like I wanted that kind of security and that kind of being seen for who I am since I was a very little girl. And so it was something that I wouldn't let people touch the idea of. And even through working with therapy, even a decade deep into therapy, I was like, we're not taking that idea off of the pedestal. We're gonna have limerence and go on like singular dates with people and be like, no, that's not it, and walk away. And we're going to, you know, project onto somebody what we need to figure out and heal within ourselves. And it got to this point where everything else was resolved and everything else was nervous system regulating enough, where I was like, you know, already going through the process of what were my other fantasies I wanted to, like, escapism that I had. And now that I'm on the other side of healing, which is a never-ending process, but like when I say that, I meant like the time of your life where it is like your identity and everything you're doing. On the other side of that, when I was like, okay, I want to like actually build this, you know, I, you know, went through a final grieving process, a final like learning of myself process. Again, final is in like that never stops, but you know, like again, when that's like what you're doing, I learned a little bit more about my ADHD, because that was something that I just kind of had to like push through when I had like bigger mental burdens to deal with, such as trauma. And really learned how to like self-manage and all those things. And in that figuring things out, I was like, oh, if I like really want to do something substantial, I need more networking, I need more education. And so I like went to school, and I'm like building all of these things and really grounding these, you know, what used to be escapism and now have transformed into long-term desires, and of course taking different shape as I start to understand myself deeper. Like when I was little, my idea of like my love of music was like, oh my god, I want to be Hannah Montana. And again, that a huge part of that came from not just my love of music and self-expression and femininity and of empowerment and like all of those different things, but also just a desire to be seen as good and as successful and as worthy and valuable. And that was, you know, something I've also noted to people, that I think I get comments every once in a while on like my mannerisms or attributes of myself, and almost all of them were a conscious choice. I actually remember back in like elementary school, like consciously choosing, okay, I don't feel like I'm being seen or accepted or validated as I am, for who I am. Again, very unhealthy, very toxic people that were reflecting back at me. But as a kid, I didn't know that. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna consciously choose everything about myself. These people seem to be appreciated in the way that I'd like to be appreciated. So I'm going to choose how I walk, how I talk, how I dress, how I write, how I hold myself, like how I do my hair, how I do my makeup, everything was a conscious choice for me. And you know, a lot of people develop who they are and the habits that they have. And I know a lot of like female identifying individuals, and you know, non-female identifying individuals have had traits within themselves that they were like, that speaks to me, and so I want to emulate that, or I want to like modify my behavior in this way. I think we've all had experiences with that, but I like so deeply saw myself reflected in these figures that I grew up with in media, and not in how people reflected me, like the lack of celebration or acceptance that I had personally experienced. I mean, I can go on a whole side tangent that I was talking to several different people about, like the internet and authenticity, and having several different debates about like the attention economy as artists, and are you selling out to an algorithm, and people talking about like, and I said, I think it's quite honestly, like, yes, all of that is difficult, but the privilege to have a community and acceptance outside of an internet space, and so many people have learned about their identity and aspects of self and have found understanding and the discovery of things that exist and education that is generally gatekept from the general public. And there is such a sense of validation and homecoming and all of that. I also had somebody who like is like a dear friend, but not like one of the people who knows a lot of like very personal things about me, but like casually had brought up that they didn't think that people could make like profound connections online. And I'm like, do you know how many relationships started online, and not just like somebody swiping on Tinder that they thought you were attractive and then the rest happens in person, but like so many things where there is this distance that allows a vulnerability and an authenticity. And they were like, well, I feel like everything's a facade. You get to curate and cultivate this entire like performance of self. And I was like, do you know how many people are doing that to your face? I mean, between, again, like consciously choosing who people are, their mannerisms, their dress, the psychology they use when they communicate with you, all of it is incredibly performative. And to be a person, to have a relationship no matter the parameters, is to take a risk in being vulnerable, and to not only trust yourself and your judgment and those gut feelings, but also to trust that some people are going to see you and like what they see and want you and accept you. And that can be a really challenging prospect when that feeling feels foreign and scary. So I digress because I've gone on like 17 side tangents, but my point here is that when it comes to the inconveniences and challenges that arise, my process is first and foremost allowing myself to actually feel those feelings, because we don't want to suppress them or deny them. Our body wants to process them, and they are our internal guidance system. So let yourself feel them and feel them fully, and then acknowledge them for what they are, and take stock of what is within your control. Now, the thing about this is so much more is in your control than you think. I'm losing circulation in my legs. Give me a second. I've been sitting on my knees this whole time. So much more is in your control. And now I have a foot cramp because I was wearing heels all day. Then you believe, right? Like I had said before, whether you desire an outcome or whether you fear an outcome, the energy you pour into where your consciousness is, what is strong enough to invoke an emotional response, your subconscious doesn't know the difference. And so it's going to continue to look for the opportunities. I mean, if we get into all of those manifestation gurus who talk about Neville Goddard, what he would teach in his class is, at night, visualize yourself climbing a ladder. And during the day, say, I won't climb the ladder, I won't climb the ladder. And even though you have all of this resistance, all of these negative, push against it, the fact that you visualized it, that you lived it, that you felt it, that like, the cold steel on your hands and what boots you're clomping on it, like, you felt it, your brain is going to find a way to work that out, which is why there is this very weird connection that you can have as a content creator, where you deeply care and you share parts of yourself, and then there's this knowing and not knowing, and also like entitlement people feel they have too, again going on an entirely different side tangent, like in my journalism class, we were talking about how like there are different laws for like writing and reporting on celebrities as there are to civilians, which is absolutely insane to me. Like they don't have the same rights or respect. Especially, I mean, like you've seen paparazzi. But one thing I've talked to my therapist about, again, like in sharing art that is so vulnerable and so personal, and this more so applies to like the music I've been producing than my more regular content, but in this as well, I'm very authentic and transparent, no matter how anybody perceives that or chooses to internalize that. That is kind of my point. To be an artist is to be willing for people to get it wrong, and not necessarily that there's always a way to get it right, but that how people perceive something and what it means to them is going to be entirely different than what it was for you. And honestly, what it was for you and the time that you needed to write it is probably a different time and a different feeling than what it is when you're producing it, when you're performing it, when you're talking about it, when you're promoting it. And when you're talking to somebody else about what it meant to them, those are all very different experiences. But again, there is a vulnerability to put yourself on a stage like that, and especially online where there's billions of people. And I made the Yuletide countdown finale, kind of talking about how we have skewed our perception of feminine energy for a really long time. And I think that there's like an entitlement to it, but also on like the complete reverse, I feel like women are stepping in to their power, but also while so many are still wounded, not that there is ever anything wrong with like divine, like feminine rage or these sacred emotions, because girl, you're right to be. But I mean, like history, like you can feel it in your soul. And that goes for every minority. But I say this to say that there's a real tapped into the energetic flow of things and women's attention and mental perspective on things so greatly shifts what grows and what has fuel and what has energy and what has power. And I think people are starting to see that. And so I think, again, just like the most important thing to me has always been intention. And this is also an argument that I had with somebody, playful, very loving debate, when I first came to school, because they were like, intention doesn't matter, it only matters what you do. And I was like, I think the exact opposite. And they were like, and we had realized that both had come from our childhood, where they had experienced people who had like never taken the action but like were well intentioned. And for me, I was like, I've had people do really great and really bad things, but their intentions were never pure. And so for me, intention really matters, and I've seen the energetic power behind what is your mental reality, what is your focus, what is your desire, and where is that desire coming from. And I think that that's also, like, talking about New Year's resolutions, that is the difference between things that succeed and things that don't. Like, if you have a fitness goal, is it because you want to look like somebody, because you want to be perceived as a different adjective, because you want somebody to think of you in a certain way? Or is it because you want to show love to your body, because you want to be more flexible, because you want to be more strong, because you want to learn this new skill? And so asking yourself and being very clear on your why, and this is something that I brought up in my business class, like the why has always been the sustaining force for me. And you know, we can talk about like being introspective, like why did it work, why did it not work, what can I do differently, and we can also talk about like enjoying the journey, because the why normally sustains the long-term goals. But like if you aren't being present, if you aren't enjoying the journey, then you're not enjoying your lifetime, or the creation of a project, and then it's not going to be of value to anybody. Again, having that clear intention, that clear why, is what gives it the fuel, what gives it the passion, and all of the intangible things behind what you try to physically create. It is your contribution to the corresponding components that make a thing into being. You know, when we try to create something, yes, we need to take aligned action towards it, but aligned action comes after intention and after a recentering of your own energy. Because if you were just to do busy work, quite frankly, you are probably at the campsite of Cringe Mountain. You are probably camping out there, and the thing is, it's really comfortable. It has fireplaces, and it has snacks, and it has like cute little cabins or tents, whatever your vibe is. Maybe you're glamping, but you're not taking the leap up Cringe Mountain. And that's the thing. You can camp out there. You can be starting something for the rest of your life. You can do all of the research, and you can, you know, read all the self-help books, and you can do all the therapy as somebody who's done so much therapy. But the willingness to take a chance on you because you deserve the things that light you up, or at least to try to them for them, that you're gonna regret the chances you didn't take in life. So tangity. My point in all of this is saying the things that people blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's the point. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Good night. The things that people are always like, how are you positive? How are you determined? What is your vibe? What is your deal? How do you show up like you do every day? For me, even my perspective on people, I always say, people tell you not to expect anything from anyone because you're just gonna get disappointed. What a limiting belief. Oh my god, the pessimism in that. But I say expect the absolute best from people because that's what they're capable of. But we all know how harmful it can be to fall in love with the potential that somebody has. Believe that they are capable of profound and beautiful things because they are. And they deserve it. And you deserve somebody who is willing to put that much into your business, to your love, to your family, to your friendship. You deserve that. But do not attach your identity, your self-worth, anything to their choices, because their choices reflect where they're at, where their limiting beliefs are, whether it's what they desire or what they fear. It's what they're capable of taking action on at the moment. Until you deeply align to yourself and your intentions and your desires, only then will the path light up to aligned action. And it's not this like, magical, here's the answer. It's quiet. It's intuitive. It's, you know how anxiety is like, it gets like loud and it creeps and it controls and all those things. It's when everything is still and there is just a certainty. You'll know. You'll know if you should take the job. You know if you should call her. You'll know if you should move to another country. You'll know. And sometimes something can seem so right, and your intuition is guiding you towards it, and you're not wrong. I had mentioned in my one of my Yule videos that when I have fed energy onto people, whether that was friends or family or limerence or whatever, in the past, I've watched their life transform, and that's because I had just shot from my heart and soul just the pure light and love and energy and power of the universe at them for a substantial amount of time. And I've watched people find their dream partners and houses and jobs and all of these things because of that alignment. And I wasn't wrong in loving them, and I never regretted loving things that weren't meant for me, because first of all, I am love, and I don't regret who I am or the fact that I found beauty in a thing or a person. I will never regret that. But that also taught me about something I needed to love in myself every time, and it was truly a reflection of myself. And so sometimes you need to have limiting beliefs at certain phases of your life, and they protect you. They're there for a reason. I had a friend who many moons ago, somebody I don't know any longer, my friend and I that I still have would, support them, and they would go through these emotional cycles, and every once in a while they'd reach a point in the cycle where they'd just be like, nobody loves me, nobody's there, and we're literally on the phone like, I'm a person. And that was something that they truly needed to believe. And I needed to believe that these connections were possible, or these people could care about me, because it taught me something that I needed to love within myself. And so even if I misinterpreted that alignment, I did need to have love in that direction, if that makes sense. But the next step will be clear to your soul, and it doesn't mean completely become complacent, because the aligned action will reveal itself. But also, don't exhaust and exert yourself for something that you don't understand yet. And what's truly meant for you will not pass you by. And even when I say the people that I had poured energy into had found what was meant for them, when it comes to my family, they found what was a match for where they are. And I think that the people that they've found, I've never seen them have somebody who understands them as clearly, or has the same humor as them, or makes them feel as validated or celebrated, or fulfills their emotional needs in the various different stages that they're at. But I also feel like a lot of those people didn't take on the responsibility of introspection and accountability and emotional development and healing. And so I think that they could have something even more profound and more magical in, some alternate universe where they look in the mirror. But, I'm glad that they found peace and happiness and contentment where they are, and in being part of the energy that allowed that for them, and accepting and healing and loving what I needed to in me. That is my closure. You know what I mean? That's why I say I don't need that closure in the same way, because I can walk away from something that, again, is not entirely healed, or might have these micro expressions or aggressions, or maybe not so micro, and know that they're not entirely healed, but they've also found a match, a reflection in their life that brings them contentment and peace for their time here, and I wish them the best. Yeah, lots of feelings. So my point is my one of a million points, but the core point is know thyself and thy energy. And even if you kind of falter out of your alignment for a moment and you see a manifestation of that doesn't entirely satisfy you, know that at any moment you can come home to yourself and you can be clear on that intention again. When I was saying earlier that you only have control over what you have control over, but you have control over more than you think. No, you're not going to control the other person. You're not going to change the past. You're not going to this. You're not going to that. But that intention, that energy, that mindset, that ability to walk into a room and say, I am full of love, and I have these skills, and I have this abundance, and I have this value, this inherent value, because of how I see, and because of how I create, and because of how I accept, and because of how I provide, and because of how I nurture, and who I am through and through. I am a good heart, and I am an intelligent mind, and none of that even equates to my value. I have value just by showing up. I can walk in with my shoulders back and my head held high in the least cocky way possible and say, I'm proud of being me, and I deserve to take up space because I just do. And on top of that, I'm a good person, and on top of that, I'm beautiful, and on top of that, I'm intelligent, and I bring all of these things to the table. And you come in with that energy, and even, again, taking that visualization, taking that intention, taking that rest beat to be like, okay, yeah, maybe I have a flat tire and my friend's sick and blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, okay, we're going to breathe, we're going to ground, we're going to silence all those things, we're going to remember our power, and we're going to set some intention. How does it feel to look at my friend and see nothing but health and nothing but wellness and nothing but abundance and joy and prosperity? How does it feel to know that all I have to do is change that tire, and then all of a sudden I have a new tire? I don't even have that old tire. I have this brand new one. So it was actually a blessing that it got flat. I don't know. I don't even remember if that was an example. I've been talking so long. And then you visualize all these things. You're like, okay, well, my intention is for that business opportunity to email me back, and for my professor to find my comments in class to be really well thought out, and for my friend to think my outfit's really cute, and for this friend to think I'm funny, and for my meal to be just really tasty, and the breeze to just hit me in the face, right? Like all of these different things. I feel like that soundbite's gonna be taken out of context. And really get your intention clear. After you, again, all this grounding, all this cleansing, blah, 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 get your intention right. Really feel it. Really feel the emotion of what's possible for you. And then trust it. Trust yourself. Completely surrender to that idea. I've mentioned this before, but a lot of people have trouble with that like detachment aspect, because you're like, how do I stop desiring the things that I desire because I desire them? And that's the point. Like, as humans, our expansions mirror to the cosmos. Like, our desire to create and expand and explore and learn and adventure and experience new and slightly different versions of history and different layered stories coming together is our cosmic call to expand in this conscious and intellectual emotional way in our own experience. So we're never going to stop wanting the things that we want, because the things that resonate so deeply, the things that are aligned because that's what we as individuals are meant to explore in our own journey to expansion. But the detachment comes from, in all of those corresponding components that I talked about, whether you're like, okay, I have my intention right, I have my energy right, I'm taking the aligned action. Once I really grounded, I was like, oh, if I do this research, maybe if I send this application, maybe if I read this book, maybe if I go talk to this person, these opportunities, I'll be that much closer to them. And then I'll see how that unfolds, and then maybe I'll think of something else. And sometimes you don't even know why. You're like, okay, I'm just gonna go for a walk. I feel really called to take a walk. I think like the nature will clear my mind, and then you see something. I don't know. But, and again, your subconscious is always going to be working on it. And again, knowing thyself. Like for me, I'm like, I don't do stagnancy very well. Like even in like a secure and happy home, I'm like, I want an adventure. I want something new and fun to do, like all the fucking time. The detachment is the trust, the faith, and all of the variables that are out of your control, that if this person is really going to match the energy that you're at, match where you are emotionally, intellectually, fulfill these needs, yada, yada, yada. And again, they're not going to be perfect. They're going to challenge you in the ways that you need to be challenged. They're going to show up in breathtaking ways that you didn't even know you expected. You know, I've told this story a million times of like my journey to figuring out that I wanted to go to school here. And in part of researching it, I realized that it had things that I didn't even know that I wanted. And again, in those different crushes or talking faces or first dates or limerence or whatever, I had learned like who I am and what I like. And I mean, and for falling for people, you realize that there are so many more things that you had never even considered, never even experienced. Again, gatekept from a whole world, whether intentionally or not, of what is possible for you, that you're like, holy shit, I would like that. That really resonates with me. And yeah, just continuously pursuing what lights you up and trusting that, you know, yeah, we might attach or like an idea of something, but like my healing journey, my journey to school, my journey to having a safe home or healthy friendships looked nothing like what I thought they would. Like my best friend, if I like as a child was to like draw up a little picture, I grew up on like Disney Channel. I thought it would be like the brunette girl, but like no, not at all. He is not some random brunette white chick. Like I have random brunette white chick friends now, but that was not like my first friend that taught me unconditional love and accepted me and celebrated me for who I was. And it's going to be so beautiful and so unexpected how life unfolds, but it's not holding on to that resistance of like what we want it to look like, and like trusting that we've already set a clear intention of this is how I want to feel, and this is how I want to communicate, and this is how I want to celebrate life, and these are experiences that I want to have, and trusting in that so fully that you don't worry about it. I think the worrying is the poison, and that's why I'm so unwilling to be self-sacrificing in the way that like sacrificing so much of my identity and my time and my life source, my soul growing up. Like I'm not willing to do that for a relationship, for a job, for anything. I'm like, if this is not fulfilling, again, the difference between a soul-sucking and a dream job, a dream partner, blah, blah, blah. It's the things that are worth working for. Like, I love the arts, but like acting, I don't love memorizing a script. Dancing, I don't love choreographing or stretching or learning choreography. Singing, I don't like doing my warm-ups. Instruments, I don't like practicing. You're getting a theme that I don't really like the work. Ironically enough, I really love all of the elements, even like editing's not my favorite, but like of producing like film and photography. But they also like just don't like there's a give and take. Like voice fulfills such a deep part of my soul and my identity that I will do warm-ups till the cows fucking come home if it means that I get to sing for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? So I you'll know, and you'll refine that intuition. So really extreme tangent later. Happy wolf moon. And yeah, I don't know, just know thyself, be clear in your intention, don't take action unless it's aligned. Feel your feelings, process your feelings, but then really put your energy into your desired outcome and don't fuel the one that you don't want. And surrender is about trust. Trusting that the variables that are out of your control will work out one way or another because you deserve it. I just sat here and edited everything, and I just want to add like one more note that going towards what lights you up sometimes brings you on the healing journey, and you expect it to just like be that person you have a crush on, or like as a kid, like you just expect to just be Hannah Montana or something like that. But as you learn yourself and as you heal, you again know thyself deeper, and that desire transforms into a clearer picture of what truly resonates and what you're truly called to embody and to practice in this lifetime. To use, like I, kind of explained it in a more like complicated, like interpersonal relationship aspect, but like to use the Hannah Montana example. For me, I loved performing. I love the stage. I love singing. I love so many aspects of the pop persona and performance. But a lot of like the attachment to that fantasy in escapism, in trauma, was the desire to feel seen and celebrated and accepted. It was the polar opposite of what I experienced. And that's the whole thing about like the whole tortured artist and like artist desire, like the claps and the whatever. It is the opposite from the neglect that we experience. And that feeds into the profound emotional experience in the art, and all of those things coincide so beautifully and so naturally, as if it was meant to be. But as I've gotten older, like, do I love the opportunity and the potential to do something grand? Yes. But would I be just as content writing my little songs and producing my little music and doing little gigs and singing for my friends and having these like soul jam sessions and just being present and just practicing my craft and having peace in my life, and that being enough? I would be just as happy as if I was doing stadium tours. And who knows to what degree things will unfold. And that's true for love, and that's true for home, and that's true for other aspects of my career and content and science education and exploration and all sorts of things. I have lots of projects in the brain box. But yeah, like, what I'm meant to experience, I trust I will. And that's kind of the point. But good night. I hope you enjoy the full moon.